All righty. Hello, folks. Again, this is Hannah Bennington and Victoria Sanchez bringing to you our monthly LibraryNow cool tool. So our destination today in the short but sweet time that we have together is LibraryNow for Spanish speakers. So whether you are a Spanish teacher or whether you are teaching in a dual language program or whether you have bilingual students in your class and are looking for additional supplemental support and enrichment resources, we are going to do a deep dive on some LibraryNow resources that you may already be aware of, but through the lens of features that exist in support of Spanish speakers and in Spanish for students that prefer to supplement and achieve resources and research that way. So we'll talk about how you can bring these to your students and families, everything from tutoring to media, books, ebooks, and academic resources that are available in Spanish. So we'll spend about the first 2/3 of our time there, and then as is customary, we'll reserve the last third of our time for Q&As, as you know your community best, and we're really curious as to what's coming up for you, everything from troubleshooting to ideas for what you would like to see featured in our future drop-ins. All right. So in a snapshot, what is LibraryNow? Quick refresher, though also quick plug, we have a LibraryNow YouTube channel, so we encourage you to go back if you're curious about more of the lasting legacy, history, and impact of LibraryNow in the city of Milwaukee. You can learn more about it. But for the purposes of today, LibraryNow is an easy-to-use website for students and educators to access library resources that benefit them both academically and recreationally. So it is two-part, a user-friendly web page and digital equity and access for our students. So LibraryNow is free and available for you and your students 24/7. We have done that by partnering with 253 schools and counting, 83,000 and counting students in the Milwaukee area. So our LibraryNow partner schools work with us to create virtual LibraryNow library cards. So if you are an MPS educator, then your students' virtual library card number is their S number, their 6 or 7-digit S number, as well as their 4-digit birth year. And then if you are coming to us from another of our LibraryNow partner networks or schools, feel free to chime in during the Q&A for confirmation of what your login credentials are. But as we jump off today, it's really important to share that if you are a LibraryNow partners school, all of your students have access, and educators can create the equivalent access by the creation of a virtual educator card, and we can answer questions about that in the Q&A as well. But to get to the stars of the show, we're going to spend the majority of our time today talking about, again, those Spanish-speaking features, resources for Spanish-speaking students available on LibraryNow. So first and foremost, BrainFuse, and we'll do the majority of our showing and telling on LibraryNow itself, but for the sake of time, we'll start via lovely go-to screenshot here. BrainFuse is known for free tutoring. So we've got free tutors available from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. every single day. BrainFuse is regularly one of our best hits of LibraryNow, so you may be familiar with it, but you may not be familiar with the fact that we have tutors that speak Spanish. So your students can opt into a Spanish-speaking tutor, whether they speak Spanish as their first language and prefer to interface that way, or if they are learning Spanish, they can also utilize the BrainFuse writing lab to submit their work in Spanish to have a Spanish-speaking tutor review it. BrainFuse is not for editing and doing work for students, it's for guiding students to the answer. So that can be especially important in terms of language scaffolding and helping students either go from Spanish to English, English to Spanish, you name it, in a dual language mindset. We're also going to talk about Britannica Escolar and our two Spanish language learning apps, Mango and Pronunciator. So in a snapshot, quick teaser here, Britannica Escolar is the online encyclopedia, and it is not merely the kind of normal Britannica with the Google Translate feature in the upper right-hand corner. And that's a really important distinction. All of the materials available on Britannica Escolar have been created in Spanish. This is an entirely freestanding resource for students that prefer to do primary, secondary source research in Spanish, or for you as an educator to pull articles and resources and clips and culture and whatnot, graphics from Britannica Escolar for resources that are all in Spanish. With that, if you are a first-time LibraryNow frequent flyer, I'm going to show you what the webpage looks like. really quickly, and then we're going to dive into Mango and Pronunciator as what's next up. So this is the lovely LibraryNow homepage, our roadmap to our free LibraryNow resources. We categorize by age. So if you are elementary, you'll land in kids. If you're middle school or high school, you'll land in teens. And obviously, we are a room full of educators broadly defined. So I'm going to select educator for the sake of pointing out a few of the resources that we're going to dive into. We compartmentalize by category. So under reading, learning, and leisure, you will find our 2 language learning apps, Mango and Pronunciator. So Mango and Pronunciator offer a lot of the same features, but we'll also kind of distinguish between them. Mango, in addition to Spanish, and not just Spanish, we've got Latin American Spanish, Spain, Mexican Spanish, you can distinguish in those ways as well. But Mango has an additional 70 languages. Pronunciator has 144 languages. So if you're working with students from a broad array of language experience, you can point them to Mango and Pronunciator also if they're looking to acquire those languages. So we'll start by diving into Mango. Mango has a lot of units that you as an educator can queue up for your students. You can share to Google Classroom. You can also kind of flag units for supplemental materials for your students. You can see our main units are probably pretty consistent, what you'd imagine: introductions, connections, community, lifestyle, etc. Have to give a quick library plug here. I absolutely love, I don't know if there's an algorithm at work or what, but the first up under specialty units is Spanish for librarians. I mean, can you tell that we've got our priorities in place? But also business, legal, medical, etc., even romance, yippee. Mango and Pronunciator both also have extensive auditory resources. So you can listen to music and movies. You can listen to a native speaker pronounce something or speak a sentence. You can also record yourself speaking a sentence and then your voice compared to a native speaker in whichever language you're looking to acquire. Very similarly, Pronunciator has lessons that fit into these different bins. Daily lessons, shorter lessons ranging from 10 minutes to 30 minutes. You can track yourself through as you're learning a language or supplementing in content. Main courses are probably where you're going to find the bulk. So they've got a vast number of structured drills, quizzes, audio lessons. I love to share that when you click into language learning lessons, you can see not only vocabulary, conjugation, verbs, creating sentence, conversation, but you can also see a lot of different opportunities for media, for Spanish words or English words or whatever language in context, learning guides and more, city tours, interactive grammar. I'm really helping to create that greater cultural context to language learning for students that are also connecting not just with grammatical structure, but also the visuals and the geography and kind of the lived life experience, the colloquialisms, if you will, of that new language. All right, I'm going to give a few additional kind of honorable mentions to how other LibraryNow resources are integrating Spanish. I think it's also really important to note that I know I speak for everyone on the LibraryNow team when we are on the pathway, the road to yes, when it comes to making sure that our resources are linguistically representative, if you will, of the broader landscape of Milwaukee, the rich and very diverse city that we are located in. So not all of our resources currently have kind of phase 2, if you will, Spanish resources. And when I say phase 2, I mean kind of above and beyond homepages being translated into Spanish. So we really want to celebrate the resources like BrainFuse, and obviously Mango and Pronunciator kind of rocking that category of being dedicated to language and language perceived holistically. We want to celebrate that those exist currently, but a lot of our resources are going to be supplemental to the language scaffolding that you are doing in the classroom. So we're so excited that there are a lot of materials in Spanish, but we're working to make sure that this wave comes across all of our resources and more of our resources slowly but surely, as well as looking at extending to additional languages that we have broadly represented in Milwaukee and in the K through 12 system in Milwaukee. So wanted to get that plug in there before we kind of give, again, this honorable mention nod to some other resources. So Overdrive and Hoopla are two digital collections available through the library, and then certainly as a result through LibraryNow. They have extensive resources available for Spanish speakers. We are really passionate about literacy here at the library, so we also want students to be able to read in their home language. So Hoopla and Overdrive don't just have ebooks and audiobooks, they also have movies and music and comics and magazines, all of these available in Spanish as well. Moving down the line in this category of reading, learning, and leisure, since we started there, we also have Canopy and Freegal Music, our movies and music apps. So Canopy is for students 13 and above, and they have an extensive world collection of international films, as well as a lot of films that are subtitled in Spanish, and vice versa, Spanish films subtitled in English, which is amazing, again, for students that are working and learning and engaging academically and recreationally with those two different parts of their brain, translanguaging, if you will. Freegal Music, similarly, if you are riffing with Mango and Pronunciator and introducing additional context to language, cultural context to language, has a lot of world music, world compilations that you can pull from as well. And then what I'd really love to spend the rest of our time today focusing on, it's not just the Spanish language itself, but also really elevating culturally relevant and culturally engaging materials for students. So with that, I want to nod to some other resources of ours. I'm going to show you the Teens tab and one of our subscriptions that is also in the realm of radio and music and culture, Above the Noise. It is a PBS subscription. We've also got a Milwaukee PBS subscription, as you can see. And as a result, we have an amazing collection called Adelante, which I will show you if I can multitask and type. So Adelante is a monthly locally produced series celebrating the heritage of Latino people, as you can see. So really amazing in terms of engaging locally. So I think on one end, we've got Mango and Pronunciator for helping engage whatever language it may be, going from Spanish to English, English to Spanish, Spanish to French, you name it, in that international context and acknowledging Spanish that exists in different countries. But then we've also got celebrating kind of local Latino news and culture as it exists in Milwaukee is pretty cool. Navigating back to LibraryNow. Oh my gosh, PBS has so much cool stuff. It's taking me a while to go back. Thanks for your patience. Our newest resource, new as of this January, so pretty hot off of the press for you all here today, is ABC Clio. We did another LibraryNow drop-in on ABC Clio, but it bears mentioning again that they are a series of four different databases of primary and secondary resources. And we have got the Latino American experience. These range all the way up to the contemporary era. So we're so thrilled to be able to introduce students to do research inside and outside of the classroom. And to see themselves really represented in the history, either the history of Latino Americans in Milwaukee, the United States, above and beyond. So we love this new research resource of primary and secondary sources for research. You can search by all different kinds of types of media, documents, activities, general resources, and there's a lot that is in here too for you to pull from for lesson planning. A lot of taking away the pressure from you for reinventing the wheel in this regard. So we're so thrilled about ABC Clio and the Latino American experience in particular to head back to LibraryNow, the last nod to a really cool resource for contextualizing for Spanish-speaking authors or text in Spanish or text written by Latinx authors is one of my personal favorites. I know Victoria feels the same, and that is Teaching Books. Also plug to our LibraryNow drop-in on Teaching Books, but to show it to you here today, We're a huge fan of the pronunciation feature of teaching book, the name pronunciation feature of teaching books. Teaching books is not a digital collection, but rather a way to bring books to life for your students above and beyond the physical book that they're holding in their hand, mostly through the realm of engaging in historical context and kind of knowledge of the authorship. So you can come here and you could either use their, we need more diverse books to create lesson plans and a reading list to hand off to your student. You can search by a certain author, like Sandra Cisneros. And then you can help a student build out their reading list from an author that is already tried and true that they love. You can discover like books, that's the feature I'm talking about. You can also hear kind of a name pronunciation. There's a lot of really, really amazing ways to honor the cultural background and context of that author and that book for your students. All right, and toggling back to our presentation. And these are some of the resources that we talked about for you to additionally dabble into as you're building out your lesson plans for students in support of dual language learners, Spanish language speakers who speak Spanish as their first language, and more. But we always like to end this time by saying we're tip of the iceberg people. We hope that you will continue to build out your familiarity, not just with LibraryNow resources, but LibraryNow resources that can be used to serve your students who come with that amazing skill set of learning and thinking and engaging in 2 different languages. So without further ado, we're going to stop the recording and leave some time for a Q&A engagement. So thank you all so much for being here. Stick around again for additional notes and some Q&A time with us.